Hello, everyone. Welcome to my live. This is Amber Carlton with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Premier Properties. And today we're just going to talk about back to the basics of real estate. This is the first episode of this series. I'm super excited to go over this with you guys. And yeah, it really is just the simplistics of it. So today we're going to be talking about terminology. We are live. I can see your comments, so please feel free to ask any questions you might have on the terminology as I'm going over it. Put that in the comments below. I will be recording this and I will put that out on YouTube and everything else too. So if you have questions later after watching this, feel free to just hit me up and direct message me about that. So let's get right into it. Okay, common terms in real estate. One of the most common terms you're going to hear is closing costs. And this one kind of gets to be used in multiple ways, we'll say. So what closing costs actually are the costs to start up your escrow account. So when you have a mortgage, there is an escrow account that holds it holds money for your taxes, for your special assessments. It holds money for your homeowner's insurance, for your mortgage insurance, and for flood insurance should you need it. So that's starting up that escrow account gets to be expensive. So one of those closing costs is that. Another item or some other items would be like your loan origination fee, different fees from the title company, etc. So those are actually your closing costs. And moving right along, we have contingency. You know what? Before I get to that, I'm sure I'll come back to this too, but you'll often hear realtors or different people say, well, what did you get for closing costs? Or what did the seller give you for closing costs? That is because when the seller helps you out as a buyer, that money can only really be used toward your closing costs. It can't go toward your down payment. So that's why you hear it said that way, even though it's technically a different thing. What we're actually talking about is the seller contribution when you hear that. So hopefully I didn't overcomplicate that for you. If I did, you just let me know and I'll go over it again. And I think it's on here again a little bit lower down for seller contributions. And I'll try to reiterate the difference between those two and how they get used in conjunction with each other. So moving on down the line, we have contingency. So a contingency can be anything. Most commonly, what we see for contingencies would be a home inspection, or a right of first refusal situation where somebody has a home to sell to move forward with the purchase on their next home. So if you currently have a home and you're out there looking for other homes, if you don't have the money to have both, which, I mean, how many people I might have cut out there for a second? Don't know what happened, but if I did, sorry about that. So you could be contingent on the sale of your home. You might also be in a situation where you're trying to get out of your lease and you might want to write that in as a contingency. All contingencies are going to have to be removed to get to closing. So if you're in multiple offers and you have contingencies and someone else doesn't, their offer is going to be more appealing. But contingencies are good. They're there to protect the buyer, make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to. And really, it could be anything. We could have a contingency of my dog turning 3 next year, which it wouldn't do anybody any good, but you could write that in. So you have a lot of options there. Down payment. Down payment is the money you need to put down on your home. So usually what we see a lot of is 3%, 3.5% for FHA. Conventional can be 3, 5, 10, 20, whatever you would like to do there. Depends on your personal situation and what your lender recommends. There are also programs, North Dakota in particular has a great down payment assistance program where you wouldn't have to have any down payment. They make up for that by charging you a slightly higher interest rate. So that's something to keep in mind. If you have the money available, you might not want to go that route, but there are options out there to help with down payment. So just talking to your realtor, talking to your lender, seeing what the best option for you truly is about that down payment. Earnest money. Okay, so earnest money is almost like a deposit. So, when you do that lease agreement, you would put down a deposit. This is kind of a similar situation in the homeownership realm. So it's usually in our area about 1% of the purchase price. So if you're looking at a $200,000 home, you're going to be wanting to stash about $2,000 for your earnest money. And once you find that home, you submit your offer. Sellers agree and say, yep, we figure it out. We're moving forward. Everyone signs off. Earnest money is due within 24 hours of that time. And then that's held at the listing brokerage most commonly until closing, where it's credited back to you on your settlement statement. So you don't actually get a physical check back, but you do get that money credited toward you at the end. So it comes out of the other money that you would have to bring at the end. Let's see here. Ooh, escalation clause. Okay, so this one's kind of fun, especially in our current environment. It is busy. There are multiple offers. We're seeing a lot of escalation clauses. So what this allows you to do is kind of take out the guessing game as much as you can. So let's say the home is listed at $200,000. And you know that you could go up to $220,000. You really love this home. So you want to, but you also don't want to overpay for it. And we don't know what the other offers are coming in for. An escalation clause allows you to start out with a full price offer or whatever offer you would like, and to go 500 or 1,000 or whatever dollar amount you determine above any competing offer up to a threshold. So let's say we start at $200,000. We decide that we will escalate $1,000 over any competing offer up to $220,000. And depending on how that escalation clause is written, I know Berkshire's personally has language in there saying that they need to provide proof of the written offer. So the seller can't just push you up to $220,000 with no proof that that other offer existed. So make sure, your realtor is going to know what to do, but be aware of that. Make sure that that language is in there if you are using that escalation clause. And that's what that is. Once again, you guys, if you have any questions on anything I'm talking about, please put it in the comments. I'm happy to take some time to go over and make sure everyone really understands what we're talking about. Okay, next on the list. Multiple offers. Okay, so that's when you're going to want to use an escalation clause. You wouldn't use one if you're the only one bringing an offer. Multiple offers is when more than one person or couple or family or whatever it might be are bringing an offer for the same house at the same time. We are currently seeing it quite a bit in our market. It's pretty common right now with the low inventory and the great interest rates. There's a lot of buyers. There's not a lot of homes for sale. And that's when we run into that. So just make sure that whoever you're working with really kind of gives you the details on what's going on with the market and whether or not that's something you need to be prepared for. Rofer. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit. Rofer is a right of first refusal. So what that means is I'm a buyer, but I have a house to sell. And I can't consummate that purchase on the house that I have right now that I really want until I sell my current home. I'm not in a place financially where I can do both. Or maybe I am and I just don't want to. I'm testing the waters to see if I get pushed, I could get that bridge loan, but I don't want to go there if I don't have to. So right of first refusal is a Rofer. That simply means that the home is under contract, it's got a buyer, but buyer has to sell their house. So if you're currently in a lease or anything like that, you could push them and nudge them out and get that home, possibly, depending on their timeline, a couple other things. But it would still be worth going to look at that home if you really, really like it and you don't have a home to sell. Let's see here. Seller contribution or seller concessions. So this oftentimes, as I mentioned at the beginning, gets misconstrued, or we will say closing costs. And I'm guilty of this. I do it all the time. I'm like, what do you want for closing costs? It is, but it's not. Closing costs are actually money going towards starting up that escrow account and paying for different title work, etc. What we're doing when we ask the seller to pay some of that for us is we're asking for a seller concession or a seller contribution. So, we see it most commonly with first-time buyers, but in this market too, with these super low interest rates, I've seen it with VA buyers. I've seen it with more conventional buyers moving into a second home than I normally would. Just because the interest rate's so low, it makes more sense for them to keep that money in the bank to, do some upgrades or buy some new furniture after closing. Or I could go on for days with the money that if you get that seller to pay, however you work it in certain situations, it's just more advantageous. So a seller contribution or a seller concession is anytime you ask, dear seller, can you give me some of your money out of your proceeds to go towards my closing costs? That's what that is. Once again, questions, please let me know. Special assessments. Whew. Oh, geez. In our area, special assessments are very real. There are, especially in new construction. In new construction, the buyer absorbs 100% of the special assessment, and that's why they're so high. In existing, West Fargo and Fargo vary a little bit. Moorhead will be a little bit different too. But in existing property, I know Fargo just shifted it to 80-20, where the homeowner is going to take on 20% and the city is taking on 80%. So it's a lot different. And that's why once you get into those new developments, you're going to see $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 in specials. And what that's for is putting in the roads, putting in the lighting, putting in the lift station, which is really basically like your septic, your sewage systems. It's very expensive. And that entire new development has to split up those costs. So like everything in life, it's a double-edged sword, right? When I lived in Denver, I did real estate in Denver. Every single new development area was just one builder. So super cookie cutter a little bit. You didn't get the intermix of the different builders. It was all national builders. You didn't have the local builders like we do here. So those special assessments allow us to keep our small local builders. They allow us to have all kinds of different builders in a development. Those are great things. However, they're kind of a pill to swallow when you're looking at them, right? They're intimidating. The cost is going to be there one way or another. Even in Denver, it's just part of the purchase price. They're not just going to eat that cost. So just things to keep in mind when you're thinking about special assessments. Stop clause. Stop clause means subject to owner's purchase. So if you have a house to sell and you want to get it out on the market, but you're concerned that you might not find something else, a stop clause is perfect. So you can still list. You can list under a stop clause, which means subject to owner's purchase, which allows you time to go out and find your new home without having to go through and consummate that contract. And that can be carried into the purchase agreement. So if a buyer comes along, really wants to buy your home, you agree to everything, but you still haven't found that home, you can add that stop clause into the purchase agreement and say, hey, we still need time. Likely the buyer's agent is going to want to put a window on there, and that makes sense. They have to look out for their best interest too. But it's kind of a workaround so that you don't have to be in a situation where you're a right of first refusal And if your home's already sold, you're going to have more negotiation power with that other seller than you would if you still have a house to sell. So lots of good sides to a stop clause. And lastly, wire fraud. Okay, another fun one. This is just loaded with fun, isn't it? So wire fraud is real, and they are trying really hard in our area, and they've gotten close, the scammers have. I don't believe anyone in our local market has lost money yet, but that doesn't mean it can't happen here. They are doing things such as sending out emails saying FM title company instead of company, so RN instead of M, and they make it look super legitimate. So when you are in a real estate transaction, when you get that seller payoff sheet or whatever it might be, call your realtor and say, hey, I just got this. Is this legitimate? Forward them the email. They'll verify. I'm more than happy. This is one thing I really drive home whenever I'm working with a buyer or seller. Reach out to me. I will make sure it's the right person. And so will anybody you're working with. None of us want to see you guys lose money. That would just be heartbreaking and devastating. And once it's gone, the likeliness of getting it back is very small. So be aware that wire fraud it's real and it happens. And hopefully we can keep it out of our area, but this is how, right? Having the conversation. So these are just some common terms. I hope you found this beneficial. I hope you learned something. Let me know in the comments below. I'm recording this. This will go on YouTube. It will go out to different social media channels. So please comment, let me know if you liked it or what you might want to hear. I have more episodes coming up talking about different things in the future that are still real estate basics, not necessarily terms. And here are just different ways you can connect with me, different ways to find me on social media. My YouTube is amber.realtor. The vast majority of ways to find me are amber.realtor. You can also usually find me under ACarlton or ACarlton Realtor if amber.realtor doesn't do the trick. And thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day and don't hesitate once again to reach out with any of your questions. Take care.